right, hello everybody. It's the Meister. Cheers from Brews and Tunes. I am super excited today. I am chatting with the one and only Johan de Jager of Into the Pit podcast. One of my favorites. Of course, Johan, you interview musicians, you review albums, you review books, and everything metal. It's a what a wonderful site that is. But today,
thanks a lot.
Really cool stuff. I really enjoy your show a lot. Today we are getting together.
Watching tunes a bit, enjoying every episode, and got a few nice, very cool musicians on the show. Really enjoy it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Cool.
So today we have decided to collaborate and get together, and we are going to do our top 10 favorite thrash metal albums of all time, possibly.
Man, it was
yeah, I have to say this was quite the challenge, coming up with my 10 favorite thrash. And I don't get mad at me. I might do a little cheating to some degree, because there are a couple I just could not make decisions on, so I might have to do a little. We'll see what happens here, but yeah, so I'm very excited.
I think what I need to at least get rid of now is just because these are in the top 10 doesn't mean that there's some that are almost I could probably interchange. But I think at the end I went with which ones I actually put on rotation the most.
Okay,
that was my final crux, really. So that they call the other albums anyway, so. Good.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I debated, since you gave me this challenge, a couple weeks ago, every day I've been thinking about it and coming up with a list, and then changing the list and coming up with a new list, and and as soon as I show the albums today, I'm sure I will change my mind. It goes day to day, minute by minute, really.
Absolutely.
Because as you said, there's just so many great thrash metal albums out there, and so many honorable mentions and bands that I love and albums that I love. But kind of same thing. I think these are the best, in my opinion, like some of the biggest, most influential in a lot of ways on how I listen to music and what I grew up listening to. So so
for sure.
Right. Well, do you want to start us off, Johan?
I'm going to kick it off.
Awesome.
I'm going to kick off with a debut album, which I always feel is probably one of the strongest debut albums to come out of the Bay Area. A lot of people cite Kill 'Em All, and obviously the usual suspect. But I think if you musicality and technical prowess and stuff, this album really is right up there. Another one I didn't put on the list, but let's kick it off. Forbidden Evil. Raw energy. The songs are just ferocious. I think having that the Ultimate Revenge videos live, where they actually play the majority of the debut album, really killer. The riffs they're churning out, Craig Lachero and Glenn Alvarez, mind-blowing from a technical standpoint. And another album that I would probably have in close second here, just from a technical perspective and strength of a debut, would be Testament's Legacy. So this is my 10.
Cool. Great album. Fantastic album. See, and this is where it's, you're going to show me an album and I'm like, oh, I should have put that on my list. Like that one, Forbidden. I love Forbidden. And now I'm like, oh, I didn't even think I should have put that on my list. Like, oh, okay. Anyway, I'm going to start off with some fellow countrymen of yours with Destruction.
Yes.
And this was a tough one for me, just because I love this, especially those early Destruction albums. So I debated on which Destruction album to go with, but Release from Agony, and partly because I'll admit the album cover just kind of, the first time I saw it, like kind of freaked me out. I'm like, what is that? I got to check this out. And I think this was actually the first album of theirs I really heard all the way through. I'd heard their music, but I didn't really know their, just from friends and things like that. I had heard stuff, but I think this was the one, it just, and Schmear, it just everything about Destruction. And I just saw them recently, and they're just so high energy and so powerful.
Definitely.
Yeah, just such a great live band. But
totally, really.
Yeah, and I just always love that.
I think.
Pardon?
Because they've now become a four piece, and the original guitarist Mike is no longer part of the fold. So
yeah,
now it's a more double guitar attack. So
yeah,
which I feel suits them well live. So
yeah,
really
yeah, just a great band. I mean, Beyond Eternity. I mean, just everything about this album, I just love, and it just for me, it kind of epitomizes that Teutonic, raw, early German thrash metal sound. I mean, it just captures that so well. So yeah, that's my number 10.
It's definitely one of the gems, and I think that's the album when Destruction became a bit more technical.
Yeah,
with also they had a double guitar attack. And Harry Wilkins, the other guitarist, was the one that brought in the more shreddy type solos at the time. And I think around that time when this album came out, Destruction was probably the most technical of the German Big Four.
Yeah, definitely.
Creator was very raw, Sodom was very raw. So,
yeah. Cool. So that's my number 10.
That's your number 10. Good one, good choice. Yeah, my next one is, this is where I become one of those fans that's probably what musicians hate. It's like the fans always say, I only like the debut, really, which is quite true. I love the follow-up also. I love the EP, but this here album is just a heavy, fast assault on the senses. I think they were still very in their roots. They always say they haven't found their sound around this time. I like it the way it is, even if it's very Slayer tinged. And they took out reduced the speed a little bit and became more catchy, groovy later on. But this for me contains all the skull crushing songs: Victim of Demise, Death Squad, Ignorance, and shall I go on? Administrative Decisions. Some of these songs, luckily, still in their set list. Great.
Yeah.
Love this.
Yeah, great album.
Really cool.
Yeah, that's a fantastic album. I love that album as well.
Here's that little mascot that's made it through to this day, really.
Yeah.
Still see it on the.
Does he have a name? I never even knew if he had a name.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but what a great album that is. Yeah, that's just metal perfection right there.
Yeah, because a lot of bands, they have names. Sodom's is Knarrenheinz.
Yeah.
That's the guy, and Dio had Murray, and
yeah, you had Eddie and Vic and
Eddie.
Yeah.
Vic Rattlehead.
Yeah, nice. Yes.
Cool.
Sacred Reich. What a great band. Yeah, killer stuff. All right. So my number 9. And this one, I debated on the order. Again, not only did I debate on what I picked, but also just the order, because every album is like all these albums are so great. But I mean, again, it is our top 10. So so they definitely are in the top. So I'm going with Nuclear Assault, Game Over.
Yes.
Love this album. Just the raw intensity of it. There was just, I mean, there were crossover bands, at that time, of course, you had Carnivore and you had Crumbsuckers and bands like that. But this it really completely blew me away. Just the intensity, the anger, the angst of it all. And I think, especially as a child of the, as somebody, born in the 70s, growing up in the 80s, and just, it kind of captured all that raw intensity and anger that I had as a kid, like just being pissed off at, the baby boomers and, and Reaganomics and, the threat of, nuclear war and everything about this album, angry, the anger at religion and they captured all of those feelings that I had as a youngster. You know, what was this, 85, 86? I can't remember. So I would have been, you know, a young teenager at the time. And this just spoke to me on so many levels. You know, just, I mean, yeah, you look, you know, Live, Suffer, Die, you know, Cold Steel, Betrayal, Hang the Pope, you know, just,
yes,
you know, Nuclear War, everything about this album, just, you know, and even, you know, the album cover itself too, you know, of course, the great Ed Repka. But what I love about it is, you know, Ed Repka is known for having such detailed work, whereas this one was even his, you know, more raw for Ed too, you know, just and really captured that anger and kind of comic book kind of element to it, you know, with the look of it. I don't know, I adore this album. And I was lucky enough to see Nuclear Assault 2 weeks ago in North Carolina, at the Carolina Chainsaw Massacre Fest, and I guess it was their second to last show ever. So there
was that something that John McEntee was involved with?
Yeah, he and his wife Yo-Yo put that together.
Nice.
So
cool.
So Nuclear Assault was the headliner for the last night. They finished off the show, and I guess that was their last show, or their second to last show ever. So they're hanging it up. So I was lucky enough to see them live, and it blew me out. It was great. It was amazing just to see, you know, John and Dan just
awesome
destroy it. It was great. You know, they that power and the energy of you know, youngsters. It's great.
Pity they're not continuing, but that artwork is really one of my Ed Repka favorites.
Yeah.
Probably next to World Circus.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah,
really very cool. Stunning.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll turn it back to you, Johan, for number 8.
Yeah, there we go. I've got a bit of a draw. No, sorry, that's coming up. I'm jumping ahead. I'm far too quick. No. Okay, this is the one probably 80% of the people I speak to would cite their debut as their favorite. I have to disagree. Even if Jason Newsted was no longer a part of the fold, but
oh yeah,
No Place for Disgrace for me has all the majesty, the heaviness, the speed. They've still retained those sort of maidenist leads, which really made them unique. And obviously, the big selling point on this band is Eric A.K. and is to this day. I mean, he's probably one of the most underrated and best thrash metal frontman of all time.
Oh, totally agree.
And what I always used to think when people come to me and say, "Oh, One by Metallica is such a great ballad. Oh, it's so great." Escape from Within. Oh,
yeah.
That is, in my mind, one of my favorite metal semi ballads.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Yeah.
Also produced by Bill Matoya.
Oh yeah, cool. Nice. Yeah, that's right. That's
really cool.
Yeah, love great album. Yeah, such a great. And yeah, one thing I always, like you said, what I love about Flotsam and Jetsam is there's that power metal or classic metal element to the sound.
Which
is cool. You know, they had a kind of a different vibe from all those other bands at the time, you know, especially.
Yeah, and they've gone through a few different avenues, really. An album that I'm not like per se that they have to be thrashy, because they brought out one album called The Cold, which I thought was just a brilliant, straightforward metal album, and with really good songs and stellar vocals. And now they've gone back to the thrash roots again with Blood in the Water and the more recent efforts.
Yeah, which are great albums too. That's the other
fantastic.
thing. They're still fantastic, excellent work, you know. And their last 2 albums are, I mean, I'd almost put them up there with their early stuff. I was really kind of blown away by how great they still sound.
I managed to catch them with Destruction actually and Overkill, and live it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, great band. All right, so my number 8, and I apologize with this one. I don't have an actual true copy of the album.
Prop.
Yeah, I have a prop. So I only have an MP3 of it. So I burned it, and then I made a little cover, but it's in black and white. But so I'm gonna go with sorry, I'll hold it up here. Exodus bonded by
Oh
Blood.
yes, yes.
Just what a just an amazing album. You know, and it kind of epitomizes that early Exodus sound, and it's kind of the album that I, you know, put up against all Exodus albums, and as well as other bands too. But I just that raw energy of that young band at the time, you know, and Gary Hope's guitar work, and
incredible energy on that album. Hey? It's just so raw and in your face.
Yeah, it's just I wish I had seen that, you know, that band live. I've seen Exodus several times, but I wish I had seen that original, you know, or not the original lineup, you know, of course with Kirk, but
with Rick Arnold,
and Rick, I mean that guitar work between Rick and Gary, that those two together, I think that's a very underrated guitar duo that people don't talk enough about.
Totally, I agree with you. They used to call themselves the H Team. Huh?
Yeah. And I always thought, I think Rick is definitely a very underrated rhythm and lead guitar player.
Yes. He's back with a band called Die Humane now. Huh?
Yeah. I haven't heard really, and I guess they're more kind of avant-garde from what I understand. So I'm really curious. Yes. Yeah, I'm really curious to see what that sounds like. I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything? I don't know if they've released anything.
Nothing. Yet. No, nothing. I chatted to Rick because I wanted to set up an interview, and he actually said, "Yes, dude, I'm keen, but let's get the music out first." And I said, "Oh, well, of course, that makes sense."
Yeah, he said the same thing to me.
Yeah, because at the time I thought something was out, and I mean I didn't do any research yet, but yeah.
I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
I suppose it makes sense. I actually got into the first album I heard because living back in Namibia, Southern Africa, we couldn't get hold of just about any album. No, we had to sort of bargain our way and trade and get some. If somebody was traveling to Germany, we'd stick them a couple of Deutschmarks at the time and say, "Oh, bring me an album, please, 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 please." You know, and then you maybe get something.
Right.
And the first one I got hold of was actually Pleasures of the Flesh.
Oh, cool.
And that blew me away. And but then when I heard Bonded 2 years later, I was floored. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an incredible album. Such an incredible album.
I mean, Bailoff is just
Yeah, and it's too bad that was all he really did with them, but because that sound after that they have a lot of great albums. Their newest album's great, but yeah, there's nothing that sounds like Bonded by Blood for me. That's the pinnacle for Exodus. So
no, it's a unique moment in time, really.
Agreed. All right, well, turn it back to you.
I'm with number 7, and this is where I have I guess I've got a draw there, but I think you let this one slide because another one of Bay Area's finest. I must say before I show it, this band took me a while to get into. And it's mostly because of the vocals, but I stuck to it. And meanwhile, this thing is just... Yes, it's not in my list for no reason. So, but Sean Killian's vocals in the beginning were... I had to get used to it. And he reminded me somehow of Jello Biafra.
Yeah.
With these really hysteric, sort of... And he'd never sing in a normal... He wouldn't phrase his lyrics like other singers would.
Right.
And he'd just be all over the show and stuff. But since then, a milestone in my eyes. And the other one I want to mention is, I actually don't have the cover art. It's supposed to be in here. No, but it's probably in the fold. But is the follow-up Oppressing the Masses. But it's the cover is somewhat tucked inside. But the band that spawned the mighty Rob Flynn and Phil Demmel, and they're back now with seemingly healthy Sean Killian and a Bobby Gustafson from Overkill. Which really made me happy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I agree. I think Violence is a very underrated band and oftentimes forgotten band by a lot of people. But yeah, just what a great sound they had. And I was in the same boat as you. Like, yeah, it took me a little while, and it was the vocals. Like, I'm not sure about this, but yeah, the more I listened to it, and I mean, so many great riffs that band has.
Awesome riffs. It's just, and it's one of those albums that for me, and there'll be a couple more coming up, but this one I can put on any time, and it doesn't feel, that you have the odd albums that you put on and you go, I'm not really, you don't listen to that much anymore. I mean, it's just a fact. But this one I can spin almost any time of the day. So just, and quite ironically so, because in the beginning it was a thing of, wow, can I get used to the singer? I don't know. And now I can just spin it whenever, So I suppose it's a grow up.
Great album. Yeah, killer album. All right. So my number 7, and this was also a big debate for me on which album to do from this band. So I decided to go with, and that's the thing, is I still don't know if it's really my favorite album by this band, because they have so many great albums, especially all those early albums. But I decided to go with Spreading the Disease, so Anthrax. And I guess the reason I went with this album, it's a great album, but I think the reason I went with this album is, and this is kind of funny, my favorite Anthrax song, even though it's probably one of their most simple songs, the riff, just the first time I heard it, it's a very catchy, but Medusa. I love Medusa.
Yes.
I love Medusa. Every time it comes on, just that riff I could listen to that all day. Like, I could just listen to Scotty and just play that riff forever.
It's almost like a traditional, and only then in parts later do they get the thrash elements in. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this album, but all their stuff is amazing. All those first 4 or 5 albums are all incredible. Among the Living is amazing as well. That was the one I kind of went back and forth on. I'm like, do I do Among the Living? Do I do Spreading the Disease? But I love, and I think too, also the album, the artwork, the album cover. The first time I saw it, I'm like, oh wow, that's freaky looking. I got to check this out.
That's probably one of the coolest album covers they ever had.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
definitely.
Just a great album, and I mean, what can you say? It's Anthrax, just such a cool band, and just cool guys, and and they always had fun on stage. They're fun to watch. They're just a fun live band. That's my number 7.
I just took energy on stage, and really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Another one where a lot of people cite the debut. I'm going to go with the mighty New Order.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
And I must stress, this is probably because this was my gateway album to Testament, and I used to have this on a worn-out TDK cassette. and later on, when I got it on this, I couldn't understand why it sounded so polished. Because the tape was so worn, and you're so used to it, and it sounded so, and But whilst the debut is probably a little bit more ferocious, it's more nasty. This one had all the, for my taste, all the hooks, more the choppiness, probably a bit more, in my opinion, thrashy. They could have done away with Nobody's Fault, the Aerosmith cover version. That wasn't really my cup of tea. But otherwise, this has got the classics: Into the Pit, Trial by Fire, New Order, Disciples of the Watch, Preacher.
Yeah. Oh, Disciples of the Watch.
Yeah. And another Alex Perilis masterpiece of Anthrax fame. So,
great producer. Man, that guy did so many great albums. So that's funny that you so this is another one of my break the rules sort of thing. But yeah, I'm right there with you for mine as well. It is Testament. But because I could not decide, so I made a little side by side Legacy and New World Order. So I just could not. So I just made a little picture with both of them. Yeah, I went back and forth multiple times. I mean, I should have, just pulled the trigger and just done it, but
well, it was violence for me. It's Testament for you. So.
Yeah. I mean, they're both. Yeah, the legacy, like you said, it's just this raw, intense, and I think both of those albums, they're kind of, I mean, one after the other, and I listen to them oftentimes together. So I think that's the other reason I decided to cheat and do both of them, because as soon as the legacy ends, I want to listen to more Testament immediately. They're one of those bands I can listen to all day long. And another, man, what a great live band. I've seen them a few times and they just are mesmerizing.
They've really gone from strength to strength. And it was a big surprise for me years back. Alex Skolnick actually returned, because when he was doing Sabotage and all that stuff, I kind of got the he was so fed up with thrash and that it was sort of beneath him. And but on the contrary, he came back, and now they're really, I mean, now they're with Dave Lombardo just joined. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Placing Gene Hoglan. So
yeah, I've only ever seen them with Gene, but yeah, I would love
to. Yeah, same here. Same here.
Yeah. And yeah, just a monster band. One thing I always really loved and respected about Testament was they never, and not to, it's like the big four, those bands became so big and so commercial in a lot of ways, whereas Testament I always thought was kind of stayed true to their guns. They always just like, we're going to produce music that we want to produce, not because of what's popular. Whereas, I think Metallica definitely went that route. But I always thought that, Testament just decided, yeah, we're going to kick ass, and that's what we're going to do. And, regardless of what anybody thinks, we're going to put out this. I mean, they did a death metal album. So, So, yeah. So Testament as well. That's my pick there for, great band.
Yes. Very legit. I could have gone for the same. Yes. Now I'm going to. My number 5. Yes, Spreading is a killer album, definitely. But I think in this case, it's again this was actually not my gateway to Anthrax. My gateway was Fistful of Metal. I disliked that album with a passion. At the time I got it. Nowadays, I put it on regularly. It's amazing. It's back then I just couldn't stand it, because I had Ride the Lightning. I had heard it wasn't that thrashy. It was more like a speed metal album.
Yeah.
And when I heard this, I was just like, wow, mind blowing. And this came out shortly after this. They released a nice fucking video. And just that whole stage show and Indians, and wow, no, I loved it. And I think to this day, Scott Ian is probably one of those guitarists that made me pick up the 6-string and sort of go for that sound.
Cool,
really cool. And I think this was also, this was Eddie Kramer.
Oh, amazing!
This was Eddie Kramer. Yeah,
the famous Eddie Kramer of Jimi Hendrix fame.
Very crunchy, heavy production.
Yeah, great. That's an incredible album. Yeah, incredible album.
Love it.
All right, so here's another one where I break the rules, and I apologize. I could not decide at all. So, and I wasn't going to do that. I swore I would not do any sort of a compilation, but I did. So I'm sorry. But it's another one of my favorite bands of all time. Especially in thrash, not just in thrash metal, just one of my favorite bands ever. So I'm going with Creators, Under the Guillotine, from their Noise Records. This because those first albums, that's where I couldn't decide on any. I love them all so much.
Is that with Endless Pain?
Yes, yeah.
So it's Endless Pain, Pleasure to Kill, and
So it's got Endless Pain, Pleasure to Kill. What else is there? Extreme Aggression.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Probably,
then hold on, I think I
probably also Terrible 70.
Coma of Souls.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so those first Creator albums, just that kind of raw power and anger and aggression. Yeah, what I loved about it was, here's a thrash metal band that has incorporated venom and that this blackened venom power into their lyrics and their vocals. I mean, just as far as like aggressive vocals, like especially at that time, compared to like the American thrash metal scene, you look at Creator and Millet, and it's like, wow. Like, yeah, the first time I heard it kind of scared me. I was like, whoa, this is not American thrash metal.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is dark. And yeah, I love the band. So I apologize for not picking an actual album, but I just went back and forth and back and forth, and I'm like,
fine.
I've got this great album. I'll just pull it out. So
it's tough to choose, and but what I find so interesting is way back, and I think people like Tom Angel Ripper will say it as well. I think he's even said it in interviews. A lot of the reason why the German band sounded like they did was the sort of naivety, not being as virtuoso as probably some of the American bands. They just did what they could with the little means that they had, and
yeah,
that's probably that brought more of a punkish element to it, more raw, more in your face.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
and
and yeah, it just seems like with the German bands too, they seemed to gravitate a lot towards venom, as opposed to where the American bands were all kind of gravitating towards, like Diamond Head and, Blitzkrieg and, as far as, Iron Maiden. So
yeah, I mean, look at Sodom. It's the big influences are probably Venom and Motorhead.
Yeah, Motorhead too.
And Tank.
And Tank. Yeah. So yeah, kind of that more raw energy, aggressiveness, which which I love. And it just Creator is just one of my favorite bands ever. I love that band.
You still do you also appreciate their more modern albums?
I do. It's not as much, but I like it. I think I think in a lot of ways they've at least, especially lyrically, they've always, I think he's, Millie's always kind of, kept to that same path, kind of this nihilistic, angry, he's still angry as hell, but they become more melodic. There was that time, and it's funny because I've gone back and I've listened to the, in the 90s, the late 90s, they went on a weird path there for a while, which I did not like, but I've gone back and listened to some of that now, and I'm like, there's some cool stuff. Like they did some really interesting experimental stuff. At the time, it was frustrating because I was, I wanted to hear thrash metal, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Please don't turn into Metallica. But then they came back with a vengeance, I think, with Hordes. So when they decided, okay, let's get back to thrash, and they came back with a vengeance. Their newest album, I'm still getting used to it. I'm a little disappointed. There's some cool stuff on it, but I was hoping for a little more aggression. But
when I heard the title track, I thought, oh, well, the speed is back.
Yeah.
So then I had to discover, okay, but I need to give it some more time.
I do too.
I don't want to pass judgment right now.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my number 5. It's Creator.
Okay, my next one, I don't have any props. I'll have to sort of graphically drop it in. But I'm heading towards Germany, and this is probably the album, like I said earlier when we started, that I spin the most. And it's I always enjoy putting it on. It's still fresh to this day, and it has this eerie, haunting undertone to it, and it's Sodom's Persecution Mania.
Oh yeah,
it's really. I don't know. Sometimes they're bordering on death metal, death thrash, and then and I think it's probably the sort of dealer's vocals. It sounds so. I used to always call it witching. He's like,
yeah,
it's like really pissed off. Probably not as pissed off as Millie, but yeah,
pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. And it had Nuclear Winter, really some killer songs.
Yeah, I think that might be possibly my favorite Sodom song. Yeah, Sodom, oh, man, killer band. See, and now again, it's like, oh yeah, I don't have Sodom in my lineup here. Like, oh, I forgot to. I couldn't. Yeah, and
on win.
Definitely an honorable mention. Yeah, what a great band. I love Sodom. I've only seen them live one time, and it was surreal. It was on the 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise.
Okay.
So it was a weird, you're on this fancy ship watching, under the moon on a, balmy, in the Caribbean, watching Sodom, in all their leather and just destroying it. And it was great too, because Frank was back, and they were so cool to watch live. And that's German thrash royalty, I guess. It's just an amazing band. Definitely. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, great choice. Yeah, great album.
There used to be a time when Agent Orange was my number one pick, but over the years, it's Persecution Mania, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think I have a compilation album of theirs. I think it was their, I forget the name of it, but it's the first 10 years.
Yes. Didn't they do some re-recordings? And
they may have. There's a bunch of live stuff on there that's pretty cool. And there's stuff that's all in German too, which is great. I don't speak German. I don't know what the hell they're talking about, but it's great.
It's the beer drinking song.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's so I would love to see them again live someday. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but yeah, I wish I had seen them in their heyday.
They actually played Rock Hard Festival here in Gelsenkirchen. I used to go there. Yeah, this year sadly I had to skip it, but I watched it streaming on a channel here, and so did a surprise appearance with the guitarist Andy Briggs from Tapping the Vein.
Wow! And
they played 3 songs, and that was really quite cool because they celebrated 30 years of Tapping the Vein, I think it was.
Nice.
But
that's really cool.
Quite cool.
Very cool. Nice.
To see them come back.
That is great. All right, so my number 4. See if I'm holding it. Okay, I'm going with Sepultura's KSAD. One of my all-time favorite albums, not just thrash metal, just albums. I mean, this just totally blew me away the first time I heard it, and I think this was the first full Sepultura album I ever heard. But and Refuse Resist is, definitely probably my favorite Sepultura song too. And just, the original lineup of the band, you just can't beat it. Nothing against Derek Green, and they're an interesting band now, interesting sound. But I mean, this album just, and I know Sepultura is interesting because, they started as a thrash metal band and then kind of became more of a groove thing, and with some death metal elements. But I those early albums they just slay me. And
this one has this one has a strong hardcore. It's got that hardcore energy. I can hear Discharge and that kind of stuff coming through.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
it makes it really heavy.
Their early albums, which are great, but they were definitely kind of trying to sound more like Slayer in a lot of ways. Whereas I think this is where they really came into their own, and brought in hardcore, brought in tribal music, brought in these, really interesting elements. And man, Igor's drum work.
He is stellar. He is stellar.
Yeah, he just
crazy,
mesmerizing. Yeah, just insane to watch that. Just the power that guy has. And it kind of harkens back to those, like kind of early metal, early hard rock, like John Bonham and that kind of just that power, that, where it's that intensity. But then he also has, he's a very skillful and technical drummer too, but he's just that kind of raw power that he always had. I mean, that was one of the things I always loved about that band too. Just cool riffs, interesting music. I always thought it was cool, incorporating kind of this punk hardcore tribal element into their thrash metal vibe. And then, these cool rhythms, just great band. Great. Band.
And was it Jello Biafra on the one song?
Yeah, and Godzilla.
Godzilla.
Yeah, Biotech is.
Biotech. That's it.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, solid album. And what I really loved was Andy Wallace's sound on that.
Yeah.
Was it Andy Wallace, I think? Well, crushing sound on that.
Yeah, I think so. Andy Wallace, you're right.
Crushing sound. Very heavy.
Yeah,
so what do you think? Will Max and Igor ever rejoin them?
I don't think so. There's a lot of, in fact, I read an interview with Max not too long ago, and he said, my biggest mistake was that I quit. He goes, I shouldn't have quit. He said, and I'm quoting him. I don't believe, these are not my thoughts. He said, I should have fired those two assholes, and Igor and I should have hired somebody else and kept Sepultura going. I'm like, so I think there was a lot of personal stuff going on between them. I wish, like everybody does, wish that hadn't happened, and that band had been, stayed as that band. But I think they were going in different directions. Max was going in a very different direction musically. He was embracing more of the groove metal and even new metal, which you saw with Soulfly. And
but sometimes, what do they say? Be careful what you wish for. Even if, who's to say they would really gel that well again, and bring out an album of that quality again. So maybe it's just best left as it is. And
well, I think that's the problem, and especially I think it's a problem with our generation is we want to, and it's not a bad thing necessarily, but we kind of want to relive the past, and so we want all these bands to get back together, and it's like they probably shouldn't get back together. Like, just listen to those original albums, love them for what they are, because oftentimes, like I said, we're going to be disappointed.
Probably.
Not always.
Probably. And that's really like catching lightning in a bottle, and that's why I have a hell of respect for things like Violence that came back and really brought out a shit kicker of an EP. It's really, but that doesn't happen so often.
Yeah. There's certain bands I think like we were just talking about Sodom. They're still killing it. Their last EP was brutal. It sounds like old early Sodom. It's incredibly angry and fast and furious. And if you had told me like, oh, this was unreleased Sodom from that era, I would believe you. Not like, apart from the production quality is much better, but still, anyway.
I think it was a conscious decision of Tom's to go back to that era. Always a tricky situation. It's a balancing act.
Yeah, I agree.
To get that right.
Right.
Whose turn is it?
It is yours.
Is it mine?
With number 3, right? We're at number 3.
We're at number 3 already, gee. I'm gonna go for a band that, a lot of people call them the inventors of groove metal. I can't really follow that. And a lot of people say they actually, or Pantera actually stole the sound from them. In my opinion, this is definitely not groove metal. This is as ferocious as thrash can get. And combined with the visceral vocal approach by Carl Thomas and the lyrical content, half of which you don't want to read. This is in my mind probably one of the most heavy, aggressive thrash albums of all time. That's why it sits at my number 3, really. And not a big understander of why people decide to follow up the law as that. I've tried many years to get into that. I like parts of it, not fully sold on the album. They've reunited and they've calmed down a bit. It's become more groovy. Sadly, Vinny Liller is now out of the band. Nobody knows why. And bit of news you probably know. Pat O'Brien.
Yeah.
The Cannibal Corpse arsonist is now part of the fold. So
yeah, that was surprising.
Little info. This is Kent Matthew, the artist.
Oh, okay.
And he also did the Forbidden covers, quite a few of them.
Oh, that's right.
And Autopsy also. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, but album. Killer.
And I think they would have been a bigger band too. I mean, it's too bad they didn't, get the recognition that they deserved. I think now they're getting more so, but I think at that time, I think one, just the album cover and the title was just shocking for a lot of people. And
yeah,
I talked to Kyle a while back, and he said, yeah, we probably should have toned it down in terms of but I mean, the good thing is, they were true to themselves. They played what they want, they did what they wanted. What's funny though is Kyle's Catholic, which cracked me up when you've got this this picture of the being dragged out.
They must have been just very pissed off at the time.
It is a killer album. It's a really great album. I've got it on vinyl, and I listen to it all the time. It's really cool. Yeah, another one that I probably should have had on my list as well. Yeah, see, there's so many honorable mentions. There's so many great bands. I don't know. That's tough.
No, I'm probably not going to find it now, but there's a part somewhere in the thank you list on this album that it's hilarious. But no, I'm not going to find it. No, let me rather leave it. Spend minutes searching for it.
Right. But yeah, great stuff.
But it's sort of underlined their anger.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So my number 3, and again, see, I have to apologize. I'm cheating again. This was another tie. I couldn't, and I don't have the physical, so I printed out another picture. And it's just, these are my 2 favorite albums by this band, I think. But then I debate on all of their early stuff is amazing. So, and I apologize, I just couldn't decide which one. So Rain and Blood and South of Heaven. I adore both albums.
I understand completely.
Yeah, I just couldn't. And it was interesting to me when South of Heaven came out, and it wasn't like a bad backlash, but there were some Slayer fans that were not into it, which surprised me because I think it's incredible.
Yes.
Especially the song South of Heaven. I love that they, kind of channeled Black Sabbath, especially that opening guitar, this doomy, but then it gets, fucking heavy as hell because it's, and fast. It's Slayer. But those 2 albums, I don't remember, when those came out, when I was a youngster, when those came out, they were probably the first time I ever heard them. I think that they scared me. I was actually frightened. I was attracted to it, but it was like, this is evil. Like, I don't know if I should be listening to this, in my young teenage mind, I'm like, this is really scary stuff. But of course, the more I listen, like, oh, I love this band. And just that intensity. I mean, they've been copied so many times by so many people. They inspired so many musicians. And with my top 3, this was one of those bands where I could interchange the top 3 easily for my thrash metal albums. Slayer could definitely be the top. One of those 2 albums, both those albums, well, and even Show No Mercy, another great album too. That was also a debate on, which Slayer album do I, because, especially, Show No Mercy, that raw intensity of that album is just, and the speed and the fury. Like, I had never heard anything like that the first time I heard that album, because I was listening to, Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax, and then I heard Slayer. I'm like, whoa, this is nuts.
Yeah, Slayer were really always a different cup of tea. They were like, wow. I mean, and the development of that band. I mean, Show No Mercy being this almost like straight speed metal album.
Yeah.
Blackened speed, kind of thing. And then was Hell Weeks, and even more diabolical. And all of a sudden comes this album, this just over 30 minutes album that just revolutionizes thrash metal. I think it's unrivaled to this day, personally.
Yeah.
It's and then to go and really hammer on the brakes and bring up really gloomy South of Heaven, and wow, respect. I mean, that's thrash history written right there.
Yeah,
totally.
And to see those songs played live is, I mean, you don't want to be in the pit, especially when Random Blood starts. Like, get the hell out of there. But yeah, just to see that band live is, was always mind blowing to me. It's too bad they hung it up, but I mean, I get it. I know Tom has back issues, but it was they were one of the best live acts I've ever seen, because they sound like the albums. They don't, there's no pretense, there's no bullshit.
Yes, and they're almost very stoic, but that was their thing. We walk on stage, we kill, and we walk off. It was no song, no dancing around, and it was just in your face.
Yeah, he says very little to the audience, like might say whatever city they're in, like, all right, Salt Lake City, whatever, and then they just play. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great. So,
absolutely.
Wow, we're down to our 2.
We're down to our 2, and this is where I join forces with you.
All right.
That's the one.
Yeah,
definitely. I love South of Heaven, don't get me wrong. I love Seasons in the Abyss. I love early works. I think all the way up to Divine Intervention. After that, it sort of started fizzling a little bit. But this is, it's not unrivaled in intensity, as we will find out when I get to my number 1, but I think you can't get any more intense than this. It's and I think it's a largely part due to Jeff Hanneman's influences. Hanneman was always a huge hardcore punk freak. That's why the intensity, the speed, the short songs, in your face, bang, 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 bang. And then, of course, those triad notes, which led to killer riffs like Angel of Death. I mean, I'm talking about not the opening one, the later on, that kind of, and milestone.
Yeah.
Milestone. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's, I would say that is a perfect album. Like,
it is perfect, and it's short and sweet.
Yeah.
And yes, Rick Rubin.
Yeah. Great stuff.
That's a killer.
All right, so that's your number 2. So I'm gonna go with so my number 2 is the classic Peace Sells, Megadeth. One of my favorite albums. I'm a big Megadeth fan. I think this was sadly a short-lived lineup, but probably their best lineup, in my opinion, in terms of,
great, crazy jazzy beats, like Gar Samuelson.
Yeah, he was
Chris Poland.
Yeah, it just was such a cool sound. And I always love the fact that, and you could kind of hear, like, every Megadeth album in a lot of ways is a response to Metallica, whatever they had just put out, in a lot of ways. which I don't know if that's a way to build a career, but he did it. Mustaine built a long career doing that. But just this album, it's always had a special place in my heart. It was the first Megadeth album I ever heard, ever purchased. I remember there was a store in the mall that doesn't exist here anymore where I live, and it was called Toad Tape. Sold tapes there. This is the 80s, and they had a gigantic poster of this album cover when the album came out on the wall, and you could see it from down the hall. And I just saw it and was mesmerized. I'm like, what is that? I got to go check that out, because I couldn't tell what it was from as far away as I was. And I'd heard of Megadeth. I just didn't really know them very well. So I went down there to check it out. And
wow.
And yeah, this, just the riffs, like you said, the rhythms, Garcen's, just that jazz influence that he had. And Chris, very underrated guitar player, in my opinion. Lead guitar player, just some of the best stuff Megadeth ever did. And I love the follow-up album as well. And
so far,
that's great. And I also love the work later with Marty. But for me, this is kind of the ultimate Megadeth album. And it was probably one of my. It was one of those albums that never came off, off the turntable for just long months. I listened to it all the time as a teenager. I could not stop listening to it. So that's my number 2.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I think when Dave got kicked out of Metallica, he vowed in the bus ride back home that he was gonna do a faster, more brutal band than Metallica, and I don't think he did that. They just became definitely the more technical band.
Yeah.
Like more musically proficient and more experimental somehow as well.
Right. I agree. Agreed. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, a really great band. And this is probably the point where I go, should I have?
Well, that's the thing, because it's that's where I struggle. It's like, well, it's kind of cliche. It's everybody's going to have that on their list. And it's like, well, I got to be true to myself. It's a huge album for me.
Oh, definitely. No, it's great. I'm also very much into Rest in Peace. And my gateway was So Far, really, wow.
Yeah.
And I loved everything from the start. I loved the whole imagery. I loved Vic Rattlehead. I loved the whole, that was just magical. Definitely.
Yeah, agreed. We're there. We're there.
Drum roll. Okay, I'm gonna go with the band they call LA Caffeine Machine. This is, in my opinion, the most ferocious thrash album ever recorded. Randy Burns was on the desk. I think this album to this day sounds fresh. It sounds raw. It sounds real. It's Gene Hoglan behind the kit. It's unbelievable. I think a lot of people have no idea that he actually came from Dark Angel.
Yeah.
A lot of people only know him from Devin Townsend band and what's it? Striking Young Lad and Testament and Death. But this is really where it all started. And some great tracks on this. Actually, with the singer Don Doty, who only sang on this album, that always reminded me a little bit in hecticness of his vocals of Paul Bailoff. Very hectic, shouting sort of approach. Later replaced by Ron Reinhardt, but yes, this just has it all. Recently had a talk with John McEntee, actually, and we both couldn't understand that we still meet people that actually, thrash fans that don't have this on their radar. So it's kind of, it's really weird. And, but I must say, I actually got into Leave Scars, the follow-up first, before I could get my hands on this.
I was the same.
And yeah. And only later on did a friend pass me a TDK once again. Listen to this, dude. It'll blow your mind. And yes, said and done, finished.
Yeah.
My number one.
Nice, great album. Yeah.
And having
having
said that, when are these guys coming back with an album?
Yeah, because they still exist.
They're live.
As I know, yeah.
They're doing shows, and I think, was it John that had Eric Meyer on the show? And Eric actually on the show, I don't see this, he showed us that.
Okay, yeah.
That Ibanez, that red Ibanez guitar, Destroyer or Explorer shape.
Yeah, cool.
That was so cool.
Yeah, that's crazy. That, yeah, like I agree. When are they coming out with a new album? Yeah, they need to get it together.
That'd be so awesome.
Yeah, great, super underrated band. All right, I guess that leaves me. So I'm going super cliche. I am going with and the reason being is this is the album that started it all for me with thrash metal. This was it. This was the beginning.
Definite, yeah.
Yeah, one of my very best friends played this on tape for me. I went out the next day and bought it on tape myself. I still have the tape, but I thought I'd hold up the vinyl because it's easier to see. But I still have the actual tape that I bought back then. But it was, the first thrash metal album I ever heard. It's what got me into it all. So it's, Kill 'Em All, Metallica. I know it's been played to death, but every time I listen to it, I find something new about it, something fresh about it. And I think it's excellent song all the way. Every song is perfect all the way through. The extended version that came out later with, the Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg, great too. But, just this original album, I'd never heard anything like that before. When I first heard that, when I first heard Metallica in the early 80s, it was shocking. It was fascinating. It was so fast. I'd never heard music that fast before.
Whiplash.
I was like, wow, this is just insane, because I was listening to like pop and rock and classic rock and which I still do, but when I heard Metallica, it was the launching pad for everything for me. So I have to give it props as is it the best thrash metal album? Probably not anymore to me, but at the time it was everything and it started it all for me. So I had to make it my top album. But I think it's a great album. Like I said, just every song is solid. The musicianship is solid. Just a great album.
But very often you associate a certain time with an album also, and that makes it magical, it's absolutely. I remember that the first time I actually heard Kill 'Em All, and it was long after I had the Lightning Master, actually. And, but they had similar style that with Ride and Master, they had a thicker, fatter sound. And more chunky sound, and just like Slayer as well. That a lot of had that early speed metal, which I think Overkill Fuel of Fire is the same. It's also very more speed metal-ish sound. They didn't have the wall of guitars, Fight Fire with Fire. Jesus, I couldn't believe it. It was just phenomenal sound. But but I also then for me that was a catching up and going back actually.
It's great.
Metal Militia.
Monster track. And there's definitely a lot of honorable mentions. I think that there were a lot of albums where for me is Dark Angel, Hyrax, their first two albums, I think are incredibly underrated band. And just killer stuff. Also, Gene Hogan. Well, he didn't play with Hyrax, but he played with Phantasm, which was the little offshoot thing that Caden Dependent did after I think Hyrax broke up for a short period of time, and he did Phantasm with Gene. But there were a bunch of DRI, which as a crossover, but that was another one I considered. Toxic.
Toxic. Oh, yeah. Just
Yeah.
saw them live and they killed. They killed.
Yeah. Josh is
amazing.
As a riff master. So Forbidden, that was one that you had on your list. I debated on putting on my list. It's Forbidden as well. I love Forbidden.
I still had Heathen. I've got a couple of honorable mentions as well. Heathen is one. I could have gone with Creator's Pleasure to Kill as well. Oh, and another band that I feel is often overlooked, Gamacide.
Oh yeah,
they actually with their album Victims of Science for Texan band.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, there's some really killer stuff out there, and yeah, that's where I kind of debated on, like, yeah, should I maybe go more obscure, like, to give some bands that don't get the kind of props I think they deserve. Atheist, another killer band, that did some really interesting stuff with jazz rhythms and
very very technical.
Yeah, very interesting band, and they have some death elements, death metal elements as well. But they were always kind of a fascinating band, and they're back and touring and doing a lot of cool stuff. Hopefully they'll do a new album. But yeah, there's
dude, I was sitting here with my LP collection. I had UK bands, Onslaughts.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Eccentrics, and jeez, it just went on, and Coroner. Oh
yeah.
So
Onslaught. Yeah, that first Onslaught album. Smoking
stuff.
Yeah. Hallows Eve. There's a lot of cool thrash metal albums out there that I debated. And again, as we mentioned before, I could easily, like, if you asked me tomorrow to put this list together, it would be completely different than what it is today.
Mine would most definitely shift a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think we had talked earlier in the week, and my list changed. And because I listened to a couple things just by chance. I listened to something and went, oh, I should put that on my list. I love this album. So change things, because I had Forbidden on my list, and then I listened to Nuclear Assault. I'm like, oh, I got to put Nuclear Assault on my list. So again, I could go, and the order was a little it's kind of nebulous. Like, I don't know, because I love so many albums equally, so it's hard to, and part of this, I think,
difficult.
I think part of it was, I had to kind of go back in time a little bit and, like, okay, what were the big influencers for me when I was young? Because now things are different, and I think it's it's also notable. There's some pretty cool young thrash band, like newer thrash bands out there that that I think deserve some credit too. That are doing and kind of helped relaunch thrash metal, or got people more interested in it again. That I don't think get enough credit, especially from the big four, sadly.
Yeah, that's it. And you would almost hope that or wish that the big four would take those bands out on the road a bit more.
Yeah, I don't understand and instead for a while they were bashing them, which say, I heard Dave Mustaine was making fun of some of the, like Warbringer and some of these, Havoc, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Take them out on the road with, like, they worship you, they want to be you. Like, why are you making fun? That's weird. Because he was making fun of their look. It's like the way you used to dress, like tight jeans, t-shirt, flannel. Like, they're doing
exactly.
They are doing what you did. So I don't know. It's the bullet belts.
There really are some killer. I get a lot of people are bashing the new bands, and I get where they're coming from. And groups, I must say, I want to join in the critique. They sound very, very cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the really tinny, or sort of not tinny, really thin production. And when you put on old an album like Heathen's Victims of Deception or something, there's still that warm, organic, fat as hell sound. And but still there are, I think, them all and sort of just criticizing them all because they're wrong, because there are some really, really good bands out there.
Yeah.
One of which I want to mention is Necromantheon. I think they're from Norway.
Oh yeah.
Sure, they delve a little bit more. Put it this way, I think they listen to a lot of Slayer's Hell Awaits in their free time, and Dark Angel, and another band from Sweden, I think they're called Tantara. And I must actually send you the link. It's their debut was actually produced by Flemming Rasmussen, who did the early Metallica stuff.
Oh, cool.
Really cool.
Yeah, you actually talked about not too long ago on your show about kind of the sound, like modern metal, the sound, and how there's a lot of thin, and which is sad. It's and I totally agree with you. I think with technology the way it is, and you don't get that rich organic. And I think part of it too is everybody's, and I get it, that a lot of people are self-producing because it's cheap, where you don't have these big producers anymore like Randy Burns and the Morris brothers, and the list goes on, Rick Rubin, where the whole idea was this wall of sound that this, and now it's
I
home
production. I think a lot of the bands, it's because I also experiment a little bit with recording and stuff. I think what the bands did a lot, especially that's definitely the case with Heathen and Rex, I think they layered a lot of the rhythm guitars, quadruple, and that's that really fat, chunky, which obviously required side playing. And when, for instance, to the last Heathen album, Emperor of the Blind, it sounds like one thin guitar track to me, and it sounds very digital. I don't want to diss the band at all. I mean, they're of course they're a great band, and, but I was a little bit disappointed because of the sound. That it's very, in my opinion, very thin.
Yeah, and I agree. It seems like there's a lot of that now. A lot of. I think it's been my disappointment as well with some of the newer albums, especially by older bands, because I kind of blame technology, I think, and kind of self-production, where not that guys don't know what they're doing, but they're
I think the whole process has just changed. I think it's everybody's tracking on their own. They're consolidating the files, sending it to mix, and basically, and I think the whole rhythm of everything has changed. You're no longer ensconced in a studio, where you actually, when I spoke to Randy Burns or Bill Matoya, he says, well, I'm definitely not doing studio work, and I'm not playing or psychologist or anything. I'm just mixing. And back in the day, there was a big part of the work was actually dealing with the musicians and seeing, and checking, okay, this is my rhythm, this is my lead guy, this is to do the rhythm tracks, I want this, and I want to do that guy last, and no, just checking out who can you put under pressure, who can't you put under pressure. That it was a big exercise, and it wasn't just. And now I think every musician is probably more at home, going, well, okay, today I feel like it. Let me sit down and track it down, and so the levels are correct, and so it has its pros and cons, I guess.
It's an interesting industry, that's for sure.
Well, I guess you can't expect bands to go into Music Grinder for 4 weeks, when album sales have just sort of evaporated,
Right. Yeah. Well, it's kind of all about the single now and downloading the single, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'll always be an album guy, but so.
For sure.
Johan, this was a blast. This was great.
That was great fun.
Yeah, amazing albums. So for everybody watching this, there'll be links in the description. Go check out and subscribe to Into the Pit. You will not be sorry.
Yes. Check out Brews and Tunes.
Yes,
check out Brews and Tunes. And guys, everybody out there, send us your set.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd love to see what other people think, and what are their top lists of
so if we put in something there where you think no. Let us know. Maybe we find some hidden gems.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, thank you, brother.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Rock on.
All right.